The galaxy had already decided the fate of the Arken refuge before the first human ship ever appeared on a sensor screen. The Zha'tuun Dominion had closed in on the fractured moon colony like a circle of predators, their warships blotting out distant stars with obsidian hulls and blood-red reactor veins. For weeks, the people below believed no help would come. They had sent out distress calls into the void, knowing the nearest human territories were unimaginably far away. Knowing help would have to cross sectors ruled by empires that wanted humanity extinguished before it could rise again. And knowing the Arkensky families on the surface could only hope that someone, anyone, would hear them before the Dominion erased an entire species for defiance. The final night before the siege broke felt more like an ending than a battle. Arken skies trembled with orbital bombardment signatures, shimmering in the upper atmosphere like violet lightning without thunder. Fires crawled along the horizon where debris had struck. Mountain ranges glowed in unnatural colors from the radiation of distant impacts. Whole cities had gone silent, communications carved apart by the Dominion's precision jammers. The moon colony's last strongholds huddled beneath the crust, hearts beating in cold convergence chambers reinforced by ancient metals and ancient fear. Parents whispered reassurances they no longer believed. Children clung to holograms of blue oceans they had never seen. Even the soldiers guarding the bunkers held rifles with the heaviness of people preparing to fail with dignity. The Dominion ships encircled everything, their silent orbit like a metal noose tightening hour by hour. No human frequencies. No allied signatures. No anomalies. No miracles. Just the hum of machinery built for extermination, and the distant thrum of a civilization being crushed beneath inevitability. In their towering flagship, the Dominion commanders watched Arken dim through a wall-length observation window, its once bright colonies flickering like dying embers. Always the same ending. Another stubborn world refusing submission. Another species waiting for a rescue that wouldn't come. But space has a way of hiding the improbable until the moment it is needed, far beyond Dominion surveillance webs, beyond their traps and choke points, beyond even their imagination, something ancient and human stirred in the deep between stars. It was not a fleet. Not a task force. Not even an armada mobilized for glory. It was one ship, a prototype so classified that most Terran officers believed it was myth. A warship forged in the dark after humanity's near extinction at the hands of empires larger than imagination. A warship born not just from engineering, but from grief, fury, and the relentless will to ensure that no cry for help from any corner of the galaxy would ever again echo unanswered. The ship's name was whispered in Terran black archives, spoken only by those who understood what desperation could build. Its core pulsed with energy that should not exist. Its engines bent physics with a howl that shook spacetime. Its hull was sculpted from metals no star had birthed. Its mind, silent, watchful, saw everything in cold patterns of survival and protection. When it received the Arken distress signal, it did not hesitate. It folded space and vanished from its hidden cradle like a ghost returning to the war it had been created for. Hours before dawn on Arken, when the Dominion fleets tightened formation and powered their bombardment arrays for the final strike, the void behind them rippled. A vibration rolled across sensors, subtle at first, like the exhale of something waking. Commanders leaned forward, puzzled by the distortion. Their instruments shook. Lights flickered. A deep groan reverberated through the space around them, an impossible sound, like a metallic cry echoing across dimensions. Then the void tore open, light erupted from nothingness in a spiral of blue and silver fire, expanding like the birth of a star. Shockwaves rippled across Dominion hulls, rattling plating and cracking sensor grids. In the heart of the rupture, a silhouette emerged, vast, predatory, alive. A Terran warship, but unlike anything the galaxy had catalogued. Its engines burned like the eyes of something ancient and wrathful. Its hull shimmered with luminous inscriptions that shifted like constellations. Its arrival wasn't quiet. It wasn't stealthy. It came howling from the void, a sound that hammered through metal and bone, a declaration carved from the fury of a species that refused to let darkness claim another world. Arken refugees looked up as their bunkers trembled with the distant echo of the ship's emergence. Children fell silent. Soldiers froze. Even the Dominion fleet, masters of terror, paused in instinctive dread. The warship drifted into full view, vast enough to make their destroyers seem like insects orbiting a titan. It didn't broadcast threats. It didn't send warnings. It simply existed with the overwhelming presence of something built not to fight battles, but to end them. Hope, fragile and flickering for so long, ignited in Arken hearts like wildfire. For the first time in weeks, the people felt something swelling in their chests, something they had nearly forgotten. Not certainty of survival. Not naive belief in victory, but the unmistakable, soul-deep recognition that humanity had come for them. The Dominion commanders were the first to recover from the shock, though recover was far too generous a word. Their mandibles tensed, crests flared, skin plates shifted with primal unease. The unnerving howl that had accompanied the Terran ship's arrival still vibrated through their command decks like a phantom heartbeat. Warships that had never retreated in generations faltered in their formation, drifting out of alignment as if their pilots had forgotten the instinct to obey. The flagship's tactical displays flickered with cascading error codes. Their scanners couldn't classify the vessel before them. No known configuration. No known signature. No known faction would dare break physics just to appear out of the dark. Yet the readings were unmistakable, one ship, alone, facing an armada large enough to suffocate a star system. One ship, daring an empire to breathe wrong. Across the Dominion fleet, thousands of alien eyes watched the Terran warship with a dread usually reserved for myth. Its armor looked less like metal and more like a living night sky, deep black overlaid with shifting constellations of pale blue lines, glowing and fading like breathing starlight. Swirling quantum halos curled around its edges, as if spacetime had not finished settling from its arrival. The prow was carved into a shape not meant for intimidation but inevitability, a silhouette that promised a single truth: whatever else the galaxy feared, humans feared losing far more. For several long seconds, the void was still. The Arken refugees huddled underground felt the world go quiet, as if the moon itself was holding its breath. Even the fires along the horizon seemed to dim, as though the universe wished to witness this moment unblurred. Then, without warning, the Terran ship moved, not fast, not slow, but with the heavy, deliberate stride of a predator confident that nothing could outrun it. A faint blue corona rippled across its hull, and the Dominion flagship's alarm lattice lit up with frantic warnings. Thousands of targeting arrays scrambled to focus on the newcomer. Shields intensified. Cannons swiveled and locked, but the Terran vessel didn't break course. It drifted between the Dominion fleet and the fragile moon colony below, positioning itself like a guardian placing its body in front of a child. Its engines dimmed to a low, throbbing hum that resonated through void and metal alike, a sound that felt less like machinery and more like a heartbeat amplified through the cosmos. On Arken's surface, the trembling stopped, not because the danger had passed, but because something stronger had arrived. Within the Dominion flagship, a storm of voices clashed. They demanded analysis, demanded identification, demanded sanity. But their instruments were useless. One by one, the readings destabilized, as if the ship's systems refused to acknowledge the intruder's existence. Finally, through bursts of interference, they managed to isolate a single transmission, faint, encrypted, unmistakably human: stand down. 2 words. A whisper through a hurricane, and the Dominion fleet felt it, not the threat itself, but the weight behind it. A human warning carried the kind of promise that had rewritten warfronts in the past. A promise that humans, cornered, grieving, enraged, did not bluff. The Dominion responded with what empires always chose when fear tasted too much like respect. They fired. Thousands of crimson lances burst from the encircling dreadnoughts. Plasma torpedoes streaked like burning comets. Rail spikes, neutron beams, ion storms, an entire armory unleashed in a single blinding wave. The void ignited with color, a massive rolling storm of light that swallowed the warship whole. Arken's surface shook from the shockwave. The bunkers rumbled. Children screamed. Soldiers braced for the inevitable. The Dominion commanders watched the explosion expand with cold expectation. No ship, Terran or otherwise, could withstand such a barrage. But as the inferno faded, as the last streaks of plasma dissolved into shimmering dust, something impossible took shape inside the dissipating blaze. The Terran warship was still there, untouched, not a scorch mark marring its surface. The Dominion fleet froze. A faint ring of blue light hovered around the Terran hull, spinning lazily, almost amused. It wasn't a shield. It wasn't armor. It was something older. Something deeper. A technology the galaxy had never seen, born from humanity's most desperate chapter when survival demanded breaking the rules of reality itself. Then the halo vanished, the warship's engines flared. Its hull brightened. The starlight around it bent inward in a slow gravitational bow. And for the first time, the Dominion realized what was wrong, not with their scanners, not with their weapons, but with their assumptions. This was not humanity's response. This was humanity's promise. Across the moon, across the void, across the trembling hearts of everyone watching, a single unspoken truth rose like dawn. Humanity had not arrived to negotiate. Humanity had arrived to protect. The howl grew deeper, vibrating through the Dominion armada like a subterranean quake rippling through metal and bone. It wasn't a sound meant for communication. It was a sound meant to remind an empire that some predators made the void itself flinch. The Terran warship drifted forward. Its prow glowing with an inner light that pulsed like a beating star, and something in the Dominion fleet broke, not in their hulls, but in their certainty. Their formations wavered. Squadrons hesitated. Even their elite vanguard ships, bred and built for relentless conquest, faltered as though the instincts of ancient prey resurfaced from genetic memory. Arken's population felt the tremor resonate under their feet. The children in the bunkers clutched their ears. The soldiers gripping rifles felt vibration crawl through the metal. On the surface, the dust rose in shimmering curtains as the moon's crust quivered with each reverberation through the airless void above. Up there. The Dominion commanders forced themselves to react. Orders flooded through the commnet. Regain formation. Recalibrate weapons. Target the intruders' propulsion arrays. Fire again. Fire until the stars burned out if they had to. Anything to regain the illusion that they still controlled this battlefield. Hundreds of destroyers surged forward, their engines spiking with desperate power. Massive tri-barreled cannons charged with planet-cracking energy. Crystal torpedoes armed with enough force to shatter a city. A new barrage lit the darkness, but something subtle shifted. The Terran ship didn't brace. Didn't dodge. Didn't even angle its shields. Instead, its hull dimmed, stars behind it flickered. Gravitational distortion spiraled outward like ripples across midnight water. One by one, the incoming torpedoes slowed. Plasma bolts disintegrated into drifting sparks. Rail spikes curled in mid-flight, bending off course as though caught in the orbit of an invisible whirlpool. The Dominion commanders stared in disbelief as their weapons, designed to crack crusts and peel continents, simply melted into harmless dust. The Terran warship's prow brightened. Then the stars blinked. A pulse of blue-white light burst outward, silent and instantaneous. Not energy. Not heat. Not radiation. Something deeper. A shift in space-time itself, a momentary inversion of the void. Dominion ships nearest the blast stuttered in place. Engines flickering like candles in a breeze. Their hulls groaned as if crushed by invisible pressure, metal bending inward, lights exploding along their spines. Some were simply erased, vanishing without fire or debris, like chalk wiped from a board. Across the fleet, panic spread like wildfire. Veterans who had survived a dozen campaigns felt the terror of confronting something no war doctrine had prepared them for. Their comms devolved from orders into raw noise. Fear had stripped command from strategy. Still, the Terran ship did not pursue. It simply moved forward, steady, deliberate, like a titan walking through the ashes of those who tested it. Its presence was a gravitational anchor around which the battle now revolved. On Arken, the refugees who had been silent for hours found their breath again. They watched the sky brighten and darken in pulses as the war played out above their heads. They felt each shockwave as a shiver beneath the ground. But now those tremors did not signal doom, now they signaled hope. Above the moon, the Terran ship finally activated something deep within its core. Lines of energy crawled across its hull like awakening veins. A low hum built beneath space itself, vibrating the Dominion ships into disarray. The warship angled its prow downward, toward the heart of the fleet. Then, in a voice carried on encrypted Terran frequencies, a whisper rippled through the darkness. Not anger. Not hatred, a statement of fact, and a promise of consequence. The Dominion flagship finally understood. This was no rescue vessel, no experimental dreadnought, no ordinary human creation. This was retribution given form, and the void trembled as the Terran warship prepared to unleash its full wrath. The Dominion fleet scattered like frightened insects, their formation shattered by the Terran warship's silent assertion of power. Ships that had once glided through star systems with cold efficiency now burned fuel in frantic maneuvers, desperate to escape a threat they could not comprehend. Even the most seasoned admirals hesitated, hands frozen above controls, realizing that tactics, numbers, and centuries of conquest offered no protection against what hovered in the void before them. Above the moon, the Terran ship's hull shimmered with a deep, living light. It was more than armor, it was intent made manifest, a fusion of technology, strategy, and the stubborn soul of humanity itself. Every line of its silhouette radiated defiance. Every pulse of energy whispered to the universe, do not underestimate what will not bow. The ship did not fire. It did not need to. The Dominion sensed the magnitude of its presence. Even through layers of dark matter and electromagnetic interference, they felt the weight of human will compressing the void. Arken's surface began to feel the effect of that will. Cracks in mountain slopes stilled. Fires stalled, as if even the burning rubble knew the battle's outcome had shifted. Soldiers who had clutched rifles with numb certainty now gripped them with renewed purpose. Refugees who had hidden for weeks peeked from bunkers, their eyes reflecting the brilliant glow of the ship above, and for the first time since the siege began, hope was no longer a fragile thought, it was visible, tangible, undeniable. The Terran ship moved into the heart of the Dominion formation, its engines leaving trails of soft blue light that bent space around them. The void rippled with each subtle course correction. Dominion weapons converged on it, launching another synchronized volley, ion pulses. Gravitic spikes, plasma lances, but each strike faltered in the invisible embrace of the ship's defenses. Systems overloaded, shields sparking in vain, firepower turned inert before it could touch the hull. The Dominion fleet felt a creeping dread, not because of the ship's firepower, but because it had shattered the premise of their universe, that humans could be measured, categorized, controlled, or predicted. A hush fell across Arken, as if the moon itself held its breath. And then, from the Terran ship, a new wave pulsed, a silent, almost imperceptible vibration that traveled faster than light, brushing against minds, nerves, and the faint echoes of consciousness across the battlefield. It did not speak in language, but in conviction. In the universality of human defiance. Every Dominion vessel, every pilot, every strategist felt it, and a wordless comprehension settled in their minds. Humanity did not come to negotiate. Humanity came to endure. The Dominion hesitated. For the first time, hesitation spread through their ranks like wildfire. Some vessels turned away instinctively. Others froze, unsure of their next command. Their superweapons glimmered with untapped energy, but none dared discharge them fully. Against this single human warship, centuries of conquest felt like dust, meaningless and fragile. The Terran vessel continued its silent advance. Its hull pulsed with growing brilliance. A beacon to the scattered human ships hiding in distant orbits, signaling, stand your ground. Witness and endure. The Dominion noticed, too late, that this was not the full fleet. That this was only a fraction of what humanity could bring to bear if provoked, and in that recognition, terror ignited. The first whispers of panic rolled across their command channels. Ancient empires, mighty and unchallenged, felt for the first time the crushing truth of what they had ignored for so long. Humans were not merely survivors of war, they were the architects of defiance itself. On Arken, the people looked up, tears catching the eerie glow of the vessel above. Children clutched their parents. Soldiers straightened in exhaustion. Entire cities seemed to breathe in unison with the rhythm of the Terran ship's silent pulse. Humanity had arrived, not as a savior, not as a conqueror, but as a force beyond comprehension. And the universe seemed to wait, suspended, for the moment the first strike, or the first mercy, would fall. The Dominion fleet reeled. The Terran ship, alone, had turned fear into reality. And somewhere deep in the void, beyond sensor and comprehension, the galaxy began to whisper the truth. Humans did not simply fight. Humans endured. And humans never surrendered. The first salvo of counterattack, if it came, would be the last miscalculation the Dominion ever made. The Dominion commanders tried to rally their scattered fleets, but momentum had already shifted. Every calculation, every drill, every centuries-honed tactic crumbled in the presence of a single human warship. Its engines glowed with a quiet intensity, bending light around its hull in ways that no sensor could fully record. It moved with patience, precision, and purpose, never frantic, never rushed, but always where it needed to be. Every maneuver told a story. Humans did not flee, humans did not gamble, humans endured. The Dominion unleashed everything in their arsenal. Grav lances, plasma torrents, neutron storms, ion cannons, an onslaught designed to vaporize the moon below along with its defenders. Arken trembled under the strain, skies glowed with the reflected fire of weapons that could have shattered planets. But the human warship did not falter. Energy shields bent, dissipated, and reformed in a dance of physics and intent no alien mind could anticipate. Bolts of annihilation fizzled mid-space, disintegrated before they could reach the hull, leaving only echoes of shock across the void. From the moon's surface, the people of Arken watched in awe and fear. Each pulse of the warship's defense resonated through the planet itself. Refugees, soldiers, children, elders, all felt the invisible weight of survival pressing down, and yet it was a weight that lifted spirits rather than crushing them. They had been told no help would come, that they were abandoned, that this was their last night. And yet, here it was, humanity had answered, not with hope, but with undeniable action. The Terran ship advanced further into the heart of the Dominion armada. Its hull shimmered like a living night sky, constellations of pale blue light shifting along its surface, as if the vessel itself were aware of the battle and adapting with sentient understanding. Dominion sensors failed to read it, weapons failed to touch it, morale failed to survive. And still, the ship moved forward, each pulse of energy whispering across the void, the humans will not yield. For the Dominion, hesitation became terror. Squadrons turned inward, unsure of which maneuvers would preserve life and which would hasten destruction. Their commanders realized, in stark clarity, that they were confronting not just a ship, but the manifestation of a species that had mastered desperation, innovation, and defiance. The Terran ship activated a new sequence. A wave of energy expanded outward, silent yet immense, a resonance that interacted with every ship in the Dominion formation. Engines sputtered. Shields strained. Weapons failed. The alien fleet felt a force that could not be fought with firepower, something far older, far wiser, far deadlier than anything the galaxy had catalogued. In that instant, the Arken moon became still. Fires paused, debris hovered in the airless crust, and every soul below sensed the presence of a will larger than any single empire. The humans on the surface understood instinctively, survival was no longer a hope, it was a certainty born of action. The Dominion flagship tried one final coordinated strike, funneling every remaining weapon into a single, concentrated beam. But the Terran ship, calm and unyielding, bent spacetime itself around the onslaught. Energy fractured into harmless filaments, dissipating into the void like sparks from a dying star. The Dominion had miscalculated, believing that numbers and firepower alone could define the battlefield. Humanity had rewritten the rules. And then the ship did something the Dominion could not anticipate. It paused. Not for retreat, not for hesitation, but for observation. Its sensors swept the fleet, recording, analyzing, calculating every tactic, every weapon, every weakness. Humanity was learning, and the galaxy had no idea how much more it could endure, and how much more it could destroy if pushed. The Dominion began to falter, its cohesion crumbling under the weight of fear and awe. Squadrons collided. Engines flared in panic. Commanders yelled into silence as their fleets dissolved under invisible pressure. And above it all, the Terran warship glowed with steady purpose, a lighthouse of inevitability in a storm of chaos. On Arken, the first flickers of dawn glimmered across the horizon. Survivors emerged from bunkers, blinking against the light, feeling the tremor of safety for the first time. They had been abandoned. They had been forsaken. And yet here it was, a promise fulfilled in steel, fire, and indomitable will. Humanity had come. Humanity had endured. Humanity had made the galaxy pause and take notice, and even the Dominion understood that this was only the beginning. The Dominion fleet hung in fragmented panic, their formations shredded, their tactics unraveling, their confidence evaporating under the relentless presence of the human warship. Its hull glimmered like the night sky, constellations pulsing with quiet. Undeniable life, a testament not only to engineering but to intent, the living embodiment of humanity's defiance. The void itself seemed to bend around it, stars wobbling subtly as if leaning in to witness the confrontation. The warship advanced steadily, unwavering. It did not fire. It did not signal. It simply existed, and in doing so, it claimed the moral high ground of the battle. The Dominion could feel it, not through weapons, not through sensors, but through an instinct older than war. A recognition that this was not a mere vessel. This was humanity's unspoken promise made flesh, that it would endure, that it would fight, that it would protect what it could not abandon. Then, without warning, a ripple passed through the Dominion fleet, a pulse in spacetime itself. Not an attack, not a shield, but something deeper. The warship's engines flared, and the pulse expanded outward in concentric waves. Dominion ship stalled. Weapons faltered mid-discharge. Sensors became meaningless. Panic became paralysis. One by one, the alien vessels felt the universe itself resisting their aggression. In the midst of the chaos, the Terran ship activated its final array. Holographic constellations expanded from its hull, forming intricate patterns of energy, light, and logic. They swirled in fractal geometries that defied comprehension, resonating with the minds of every pilot. Every commander, every observer. It was not a weapon in the conventional sense, it was a statement. A demonstration that humanity did not merely confront force with force, it confronted inevitability with ingenuity, courage, and unshakable resolve. On Arken, the bunkers trembled with the resonance, and for the first time in weeks, the refugees felt safe enough to rise. Children peered over the edges of their hiding places. Soldiers unclenched rifles. Citizens stepped into streets with cautious hope. Humanity had arrived, not as a savior, not as a conqueror, but as a force that could not be ignored, a species that would never bow. The Dominion flagship, the largest vessel in the Armada, attempted one last maneuver, an overwhelming focus strike aimed at annihilation. Its engines screamed, its cannons glowed with lethal anticipation, and its crews braced for finality. Yet the Terran warship, calm and resolute, passed through the oncoming storm like a blade through mist. Energy fractured and bent, weapons collapsed into harmless filaments, shields adapted, and the impossible unfolded. The attack failed. Not because the humans had superior firepower, but because they had foresight, ingenuity, and the unyielding will of a species that refuses extinction. And then the warship paused. Above the moon, it hovered for a heartbeat, as if surveying the battlefield and acknowledging its work. Dominion ships reeled in disarray, retreating where they could, drifting helplessly where they could not. The humans below saw the glow of the ship reflected in the stars, the promise of protection written in steel and light. They understood instinctively, this was not the end. It was the first act of a species unwilling to be extinguished. The Terran vessel's engines flared once more, bending light and gravity in a show of quiet authority. The Dominion fleet faltered and then withdrew, the remnants of their pride and terror lingering like smoke. Humanity had not revealed its full strength. The galaxy had only glimpsed the edge of its will, and already empires trembled, on Arken. As the first real dawn painted the horizon, the survivors stood and looked up. Their planet, their home, had been defended. Not by hope alone, not by luck, but by the hand of a species that would never surrender. Humanity had risen, not in force alone, but in certainty and resolve, and somewhere in the void, a silent message pulsed across the stars: humanity had arrived.